Welcome back to the Quotive Corner, where we take a single quote, reflect upon it, and learn something that you can take away to improve your life. Thanks for joining me. Today's quote is one of those lines that sounds almost too simple, the kind of thing you'd nod at and scroll past. But sit with it for a few minutes and it starts to get more interesting and a little uncomfortable. The art of being wise is the art of knowing what to overlook. That comes from William James, and it appears in his landmark work, The Principles of Psychology, published in 1890. James was an American philosopher and psychologist, one of the founders of pragmatism, a philosophical tradition that evaluates ideas by their practical consequences rather than their abstract purity. He taught at Harvard for decades and is widely considered one of the most important thinkers America has ever produced. He was also the brother of novelist Henry James, which makes for an interesting family dinner conversation to imagine. His Principles of Psychology was groundbreaking not just as science, but as philosophy. It treated the human mind as something dynamic, selective, and shaped by habit rather than a passive recorder of reality. So, what is he actually saying? At first glance, it sounds like permission to be lazy. Knowing what to overlook. Isn't that just another way of saying ignore things you don't want to deal with? But that's not it at all. The quote doesn't say overlook everything or avoid difficulty. It says the wisdom is in knowing what to overlook. The discrimination is the whole point. James understood, as a psychologist, that attention is a finite resource. The mind cannot process everything with equal weight. It has to filter. Every moment, you're receiving an enormous volume of information. Sensory input, social cues, worries about the past, anxieties about the future, the noise of other people's opinions, the thousand small irritants of daily life. If your mind tried to engage fully with all of it at once, you'd be paralyzed. The brain's filtering system isn't a flaw. It's how thinking becomes possible at all. But here's where wisdom enters. Not all filtering is equal. The untrained mind filters by default, by habit, by emotional reactivity, by whatever is loudest or most threatening in a given moment. The wise mind filters deliberately, by choosing what actually deserves attention and what can safely be set aside. That's a very different thing. Think about what gets overlooked by wise people that less disciplined thinkers can't let go of. Minor slights, petty arguments, the need to be right in every small exchange. Other people's bad moods that have nothing to do with you. The gap between how you imagined something would go and how it actually went. The endless stream of things you cannot control. A wise person doesn't pretend these things don't exist. They simply decline to grant them the energy they're demanding. We talked before about Voltaire's observation that not everything true needs to be said, that wisdom involves judgment about when and whether to speak. James is making the same kind of argument about attention. Not everything that calls for your attention deserves it. Part of what we call wisdom is the quiet discipline of not taking every bait. There's also something here that connects to what Alan Cohen pointed toward. That pain comes not from the insult itself, but from the part of your mind that agrees with it and keeps replaying it. The flip side of that is James's observation. If you know what to overlook, the insult doesn't find purchase, not because you're in denial, but because you've developed the judgment to recognize it as something that doesn't require your engagement. Now, and this is important, there is a version of knowing what to overlook that is actually the opposite of wisdom. Avoidance dressed up as discernment. Overlooking patterns of behavior in relationships that are genuinely harmful. Overlooking problems in your work or character that actually need attention. Overlooking your own role in a conflict because examining it would be uncomfortable. That's not wisdom. That's willful blindness with better branding. The distinction comes down to intent and honesty. Wise overlooking is active and intentional. You've assessed something, determined it doesn't warrant your energy, and moved on. Avoidance is passive and fearful. You haven't assessed it at all because the assessment itself is threatening. One makes you more effective. The other accumulates until it breaks something. James was also a deeply practical thinker, and I think the practical application of this quote is worth being specific about. What are you currently giving attention to that isn't earning it? The colleague who annoyed you 2 weeks ago. the hypothetical future disaster you've been rehearsing, the opinion of someone whose judgment you don't even respect, the argument you keep replaying where you finally say the perfect thing. All of that is real estate in your mind being occupied by tenants who aren't paying rent. Overlook them deliberately, not because they don't exist, but because your attention is genuinely more valuable than that. And on the other side, what are you overlooking that actually needs you? The relationship that's fraying because neither person wants to address it, the habit that's quietly compounding in the wrong direction, the feedback that stings precisely because it's accurate. Rita Mae Brown's point that we discussed in a previous episode about examined experience applies here too. The lesson only arrives if you're willing to look. Wisdom isn't just selective attention. It's knowing which direction to point that selection. James spent his career trying to understand how the mind actually works rather than how we'd like it to work. And what he found over and over was that attention is not neutral. What you focus on shapes your experience, your habits, your character. The person who can't stop fixating on every grievance is being shaped by those grievances, whether they intend it or not. The person who has learned to release what doesn't warrant engagement and to direct that energy toward what does is building something different. That's the art. Not passive acceptance, not strategic ignorance. A practiced, deliberate, honest discipline of knowing the difference between what deserves your mind and what doesn't. It takes a lifetime to develop, but it starts with the question James is quietly asking. Is this actually worth your attention? Most of the time, the honest answer is no. Thanks for spending a few minutes here at the Quotive Corner. If this one made you think about where your attention has been going lately, and whether it's been going somewhere useful, good. That's the point. And like that point, remember this one. Wisdom isn't in the quote, it's in the reflection. I'll meet you soon in the next episode.